There is a contradiction in God's creation account in the Bible between Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. Genesis 1 clearly identifies God as creating the animals before he created humans. But in Genesis 2, the Bible says that God created man first and then the animals. Specifically in verses 18 to 19, the Bible says that after creating man, God decided that he should not be alone. But strangely, he formed the animals out of the ground and brought them to the man so that he could name them. Then, after still not finding a suitable companion for the man, he decides to create woman. When you point out that God created animals after creating man, contradicting Genesis 1, which says that animals were created before humans, Christian apologists usually respond by saying, no, in Genesis 2 it doesn't mean that God created the animals after creating the man. The animals were created before man, but God only formed all the animals he had already created and brought them to the man. But that's not an explanation, it is just twisting their own Bible. According to Genesis 2, the animals were formed out of the ground after man was created. Now, let me bring up a very interesting remark made by an ex-Christian in her email to me some days ago. She was giving her synopsis of Genesis 1 and 2 and raised a very profound question regarding God creating man first and then deciding to create woman only after he found man to be alone. You can read her question on the screen now. She says, anyone who knows farm animals knows that all mammals share a similar reproductive template. Did God make male zebra and female zebra and yaks and bats and whales and then wonder for a time whether if male humans needed female humans or not? How on earth is that thought even possible? This is her question. Now, let's assume that the Christian apologists are right in saying that in both Genesis 1 and Genesis 2, the Bible says that animals were created before humans. Here is what my ex-Christian friend points out. God created man first, and for some time he didn't know that male humans needed female humans. How is that even possible? He created the animals male and female. So after creating all the animals male and female, he forgot that humans needed females? The male-female pattern was already built into God's creation. God already created animals as male and female. The pattern was already everywhere around him. And yet when God creates Adam, Genesis presents Adam as alone. God then says, it is not good that the man should be alone. Then God brings the animals to him. And none is suitable. Genesis 2:20 specifically says, but for Adam no suitable helper was found, after forming and bringing all the animals to Adam. Only after this does God create Eve. Why is this process? God already knew what a male was. God already knew what a female was. God had already created male and female animals. God already knew that Adam was male. God already knew that Adam was alone. And yet the story has God bring the animals to Adam before creating the woman. Now, the Christian apologists might want to admit that, okay, we agree that God created the animals after creating Adam in order to protect their God's omniscience. But that only makes their position look more absurd. If the animals were created after Adam, then God has already created Adam as a solitary male human. He then creates a whole range of male and female animals. He brings them to Adam, and after the animals are considered, the narrator tells us, but for Adam no suitable helper was found. Then, and only then, God creates the woman. So what happened? God creates the animals male and female in order to find a suitable companion for Adam among the animals. He couldn't find a suitable helper. Then he realizes, oh my God, I just created the animals male and female. Why didn't I do the same with humans? Then he decides to create a female human being following the same pattern. So we are left with a story in which God appears to work through a process of discovery before arriving at something that, as an omniscient God, he should have known from the beginning. And that is exactly what we should expect when we are dealing with a human-made ancient creation story, not an omniscient God revealing history. The Bible is not a divine history book. It is a collection of ancient myths, legends, traditions, and theological stories created by human beings. That is also why we find contradictions between the two creation accounts in Genesis. They were based on myths that were already popular in earlier man-made traditions and were later incorporated into the Bible. And once you start reading the Bible without assuming beforehand that it is the perfect word of an omniscient God, you will understand that the whole book is just a myth.